break your mind. Please hang up and try again.
Everybody, welcome back to VDVRA Arcade. In today's video, I'm going to be swapping out the T150 I've had the last 10 years for some newer driving tech with the direct drive steering wheel. So, without further ado, let me show you what I chose. And I chose the sweet ass Mad Catz analog steering wheel with foot pedals. It's perfect for ridge racer, wipeout, air combat, and more. I mean, just check out those pedals. Check out those pedals. Look at how buttery smooth those are going to allow me to go into the turns so that I can take off out of those turns and leave everybody in the dust. I mean, look at the shifter pedal. That shifter pedal's so sweet, it's going to be making you go the speed of light. I'm telling you, speed of light level shifting with that shifter pedal. This thing comes fully equipped with 180 degrees spring force. Spring force, everybody. I'm telling you, you have never experienced spring force, and it is going to revolutionize the sim racing industry. I'm telling you, once I get this thing hooked up and you can see me driving with it and you see how I increase my lap times, you are all going to want one of these, and I will tell you how to get one. But before I do, I gotta tell you, there are more features. It's got paddles on the back side, and those paddles essentially allow you to go turbo light speed. Turbo light speed. I don't even know if that exists, but this thing will let you do it. So, if you guys want one of these, you stick around, watch a little bit more of the video until I get it set up, and once I get it all hooked up and running and I show you the races, then I will show you how you can obtain one of these sweet Mad Catz analog steering wheels for yourself so you can dominate your friends in the competition. Stay tuned. Alright, in all seriousness, this is the very first steering wheel that I ever bought. I didn't play many racers with it because it was pretty generic, but I did play one game with it a lot because it worked really well, and that was Wipeout. For some reason, the way this 90-degree steering translated into the way you had to fly the ships in Wipeout, it was awesome. Worked spectacularly. You could put the shifter paddles as your air brakes, so this thing worked super awesome. I ended up building a wood cockpit to mount this to so that I could race it a little bit more easy. And I had these things called virtual I/O glasses, which were like virtual reality headset, but just with an 80-inch screen, and we would cover our heads with a towel to black it out. We put a fan in front of the cockpit, and someone would turn it on when you'd accelerate, and for a second or two it felt so real. It felt so cool. It was one of the coolest experiences I ever had playing video games, especially for that era. And it's one of the main reasons why I have a motion simulator today. It's one of the reasons why I'm into VR. And I just thought, since this was an upgrade video, that it would be super, super funny to show you guys this. Maybe throw the 4 or 5 of you who watch this for a loop and get a laugh out of you. Anyways, let's move on to the actual steering wheel. And I went with the T598, and there's a few reasons why I went with this. When I started doing the research and I was looking at PlayStation and PC compatible models, for me it came up with the T598, the Fanatec DD Pro, and then the Logitech RS50. When I looked at the price and realized the Logitech is almost $1,000, the Fanatec is $750, and this I can get for $500, made my decision a lot easier, especially when I have the TLCM pedals that have the load cell that this doesn't have at the moment yet. So for me, it started to make it a no-brainer. And when I looked into the haptics and the motor design, because I saw all the noise this was getting, I was even more intrigued, and I was willing to take a chance on it, that it wasn't as bad as what it was getting ripped on for it. So I bought this, and what I'm going to do in this video, because it's been 10 years since I've upgraded, and I've never upgraded to a direct drive, is I want to give you a perspective from somebody coming from this and going to this versus the people at top that are always used to the good stuff coming down to the lower end. You know, I'm gonna be the Pinto going to the Corvette, not the Ferrari going down to the Corvette, okay? So I'm gonna do some comparisons of the wheel, what's different, what makes it feel better, what feels like it's an upgrade or not. And then I'm gonna do a couple comments on the motor design and why it's beneficial, and the haptics that are beneficial, and the power a little bit from my understanding. And then I'm gonna do a race, and I'm gonna see if racing with this makes me faster than racing with my T150. And then I'll do some closing comments and give my overall impression after I've used this thing to see just how much different it is than the T150 I have right here. So if you're in the market for a new wheel and you want to get in a direct drive, $300 to $600, and this is going to be probably one in your price range, and you don't think you're getting good enough information, and you want a little bit more detail on what it would be like kind of coming from this to this, stick around, and I will try and provide you with information you don't find anywhere else to try and help you make the best decision you can. So we'll see you in the next section, the wheel comparison. All right, here is the sport wheel that comes with the T598. Yes, it is plastic. Yes, it is not as nice as the wheels that come with the Fanatec DD Pro or the Logitech RS50. But it is not a cheap, flimsy piece of junk. And if you're coming from something like this, then it's going to be an upgrade in a lot of different ways over what you currently have. And I'll show you those ways now. When I first took it out of the bag and I held it like this, because this is how I drive most of the time, it felt a lot nicer. I felt these little bumps that they added on this wheel. They're not very big, but I felt them, and they don't have them on this wheel. The other thing, I went to see what's it like if you want to Formula One it, you know what I mean? And felt pretty good. Felt better than that. And when I was looking at the side profile, I noticed that there's a little bump right here to fit your hand better. And that's an improvement. So to me, it felt a lot nicer, more robust, more high budget, you know, but doing that, this just felt a lot fatter to me. You know, when I would go like this and like this, took a minute for me to discern it, but yeah, and it's fatter. This is thicker. So those things right there make this feel more premium than what I have with the T150. Then I put it up to the wheel like this to measure and check it. And it is larger, about ½ inch or more, 3/4 of an inch or so bigger, I don't know, on each side. And that's nice because for me, this started to feel a little small. So that added thickness and the added diameter of the wheel makes this feel more like a car wheel to me, you know? And what the other thing I noticed then is that the rubber grips on each side are about this much taller on each side roughly than the ones on my T150, which now allows me to have my hands completely on the rubber instead of before I used to always have my index finger on the plastic, which to me is another upgrade. The other really major change from this wheel to that wheel is the shifter paddles. Now these are magnetic shifter paddles versus just like a click button, but oh my goodness, is this a huge difference. These feel so much more responsive, so much more crisp, so much more sharp. I mean, it's amazing how much nicer these feel than this. These feel like crap, like a lot of slop. I mean, like there's a huge amount of travel where these, there's just barely any at all, you know? And I used to think these were nice, and now I think they're just sloppy and not good at all after playing with these. And that's funny how fast your perception can change when you play with something nicer than what you have. So, yeah, so far, everything about this wheel is nicer. It feels like an upgrade. It feels more premium. You know, the only other thing left to talk about ultimately would be the look. And for me, I think it looks nicer than the one I have. I like it has the 4 red things in the corners. I like the carbon fiber, even though it's fake. I'm fine with saving money because it's not making me a faster racer. You know, so for me, I think it looks nicer. The buttons, you know, the nice thing about these buttons is that they're podium buttons. So when you're blind in VR, you can feel a little bit. And if you're a PSVR 2 user, they're kind of grouped like sense controllers, you know, each side. So that's kind of nice for a familiarity thing. As for where they moved the menu button for resetting your headset view, if you're a PSVR 2 user, I'm not sure I like that as much as where it was on my T150. I'll see when I race if I like it better or not, but I'm not so sure. So, yeah, that's the wheel. I don't think, you know, you try and flex it, and I'm trying, and I just don't think that this is as crappy as it's made out to be, even though in the grand scheme of things, this is the lowest end wheel you can get. So to me, if you can't get anything better right away and you're stuck with this, I don't think this is going to inhibit you from being competitive in any way, shape, or form. You're going to be able to be just as competitive as this as you are if you go buy a $200, $300, $400, $500 steering wheel. So with that being said, if you know how to race, you'll be just fine. All right, so let's talk about the design. Now, I know this got a lot of flack because of the way it looks. It's all tall and wide. It blocks people's setups. It doesn't fit. It looks ungodly compared to what people like, and the Moza and the R50 and the Fanatec and blah, blah, blah. I get it. But if you judge this specifically on its look and design, you might be missing out on an experience that you're not going to get anywhere else. And I guess True Force is the closest thing that people that I've come across say to this, but I think this is unique because at the end of the day, the RS50 is still a traditionally designed motor. If you understand the designs of traditional and axial motors, then you would understand why this is tall and wide. And if you don't, I'll explain real quick right here. An axial motor has a stator like this and a plate with magnets and a plate with magnets. The magnets generally go from the outside to the inside, and then they're placed all the way around it like this on both sides. It spins, generates its magnetic forces, and gives you your haptic feedback. Same concept with a traditional motor, except with the traditional motor, the magnets are on the outside like this. They're a little bit longer, but the form factor is smaller, right? And so when you have a traditional motor, you end up having a motor that's a little bit longer, but narrower and shorter this way. And an axial motor is always going to be wider like this, taller like this, but skinnier like that. Now, there are benefits to axial motors that you don't have on a traditional motor. Like because of the way this is designed, the magnets can be placed closer together, which means that you don't have those dead spots, which is what you feel and people call cogging, like you have on a traditional motor. And because of this, you're going to have a lot smoother spinning, more precision, thus better handling, and you should perform better. The other thing is because of this design, this can take advantage of additional power or resonance frequencies and can manipulate them to give you haptics you can't get in a regular motor. And on top of it running cooler, those are benefits that are a big advantage over the traditional motors. And they're also cheaper to produce, which is probably one of the reasons why this is a cheaper option. Of course, the steering wheel is cheaper and it has a plastic case, but that also makes it cheaper. And if you watch the power section, you'll understand a little bit more on why the power size isn't such a big issue, being a 5 versus an 8. But yes, so if I wouldn't overlook this design because it's big, because technically this motor design, axial motor designs, are a superior motor to traditional motors. And in this class, I think it offers a lot more than what people realize. And when you look at the price, it's hard to beat. So if you're somebody in that $300 to $600 range, looking to upgrade from something like this might be something you want to pay attention to, because you could miss out on haptics and an experience that you can't get anywhere else for an awesome price. Alright, so I just want to touch briefly on the brake kit that I'm not going to use until they release their load cell for it. And because I have a TLCM set, and that's one of the reasons why I bought this, because I could use that with this until they came out with that. So for me, it doesn't make any sense. But if you don't have anything but stock pedals with your set, and this is all you're using, and you've got stock T150, stock G29, or stock T300 or something, in my opinion, these are much better. Unless you use a clutch on them, you don't have a clutch here. But if you don't use the clutch, the way these look constructed and based on my understanding and how to build, because I fabricate and everything, these look much more robust. They look like they'll have much better resistance tension and feel much nicer. Hall effect sensors are much nicer. So these should work for you pretty good if you don't really have anything until you can upgrade to the load cell. But I do recommend everybody upgrade to a load cell if you get into sim racing. It will decrease your lap times. It will allow you to drive a little more aggressive because it'll allow you to maintain more control when you're slowing down into corners and or trying to travel around cars and weaving in and out of traffic a little bit. So load cells are the only way to do it. So I do recommend that. But for anybody coming from something like this, looking in the $300 to $600 range, these brakes should work for you until you can get some load cell for it. Alright, for those of you who may come across reviews commenting on this being a toy or seeming like a toy because of the steering wheel and the servo, I just want to say, as someone who builds signs, and I build 1,000-pound signs, hundreds of pound signs, and install footings and big steel poles and everything. And we have a CNC machine right over here, a shop, fabrication shop right behind us. As someone who does that, I'm going to tell you, this isn't a toy. This doesn't feel like a toy. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel flimsy. The case feels robust even though it's plastic. It even kind of somewhat feels like it's aluminum when you touch it like this. But this by no means is a toy. So if that was something that was scaring you away from it, I'm going to tell you right now, I wouldn't be concerned with it because the motor design allows for it to be plastic, and that is actually a benefit. Yeah, you could put it in aluminum, but why when you could get the same performance for less money in a plastic housing and save money? So yeah, I wouldn't worry about this at all. That don't take the toy comments that you see, if you do see them, literal. Okay. I want to explain why I was okay going with the 5 Newton meter motor versus the Logitech's 8 Newton meter RS50 and Fanatec's upgradable DD Pro. First off, I'm coming from T150, which is a 2.0 Newton meter motor. If you're coming from something like this, most of these motors are right around that range. Here's a list that I put together of pretty much all the popular belt-driven, cog-driven motor steering wheel setups that people have for sim racing, and it shows their Neuton Power. So if you have one, you can see where you stack up, because I think I've got all 3 direct drives listed as well. So right away, this is 150% stronger than what I already have. So that's going to be a big difference, and that doesn't even account for the other upgraded feature sets that you get, right? So the other major thing that makes this even better to me is the way axial motors are designed allows them to create resonances that you can't get with a radial motor. These resonances basically can be controlled and redirected as haptic, like their gear shift. And because of that, it's like adding another layer to the standard haptics you would get in a radial motor. And for that reason, these feel like they can output at a higher Newton meter rating than what their stated rating actually is. They released a paper, and I'll attach it in my stuff down below, where they said that when this motor was maxed out, it created more vibrations than the TGT2 transducer in the same frequency range. And what I understood that as is that this thing basically can output the same Newton meter force of that wheel. And if you look at this list, it's down at the bottom under Thrustmaster, and it's a 6 to a 6.4 wheel. So that's saying that this, at the very least, is a 6 to a 6.4, and it says it can produce more. Granted, it's maxed out, which, was it 6.6, 6.8, 7? You know? So essentially, even though it's listed as a 5.0, because it can take advantage of the resonance factor that this produces that you can't get from a radial motor, you're in essence getting a stronger motor than you otherwise would. So the difference between 8 and that isn't as much. So now when you compare it to the monetary side, the only thing that's really getting better, I mean, you do have a little bit of better brake and better wheels still, but $250 to $500 more than this. And to me, if you're a budget conscious person looking to upgrade in that $300 to $600 range, that might do you good. I'm all for a good deal. So for me, among the other things I mentioned in this video was why I was okay with this motor. And if you want, I'd recommend reading that paper if you want to understand more about what they're talking about. But to me, that intrigues me, and I wanted to see what this new motor design was about. So yeah, let's move on to haptics, which is the other half of Newton meter force. All right, I want to talk about haptics because at the end of the day, haptics is the name of the game. It's what everybody's chasing when they're chasing the Newton force. Now, with the way this motor is designed, it's designed quite a bit differently. So it doesn't need as strong as a Newton force meter to produce the same strength haptics as something, say, an 8 Newton force meter. But what is unique about this motor is the way it produces haptics and the fact that it can produce additional haptics, because this style motor has a resonance factor that can be manipulated and controlled and then turned into additional haptics to give you experiences that you can't get on what the traditional motors do. At least that's what they say. Now, apparently the gear shift is a haptic that is created in this way that you can't get on anything else. And if that's the case, then that's pretty interesting. And to me, one of the reasons why I chose this. Now, what set me off to it was a reviewer who was testing this and a Fanatec DD Pro. And he said when he went with the DD Pro over curb bumps and everything, it felt sharp, precise, crisp, but it felt a little robotic. And when he went over them with the T598, he said it felt a little bit more open, flowing, organic, animal, you know. And then he said some stuff about the gear shift and some other things about the motor, and I was interested, so I looked it up a little bit more. When I started to understand what this motor actually represented, a light bulb went off in my head, and right away I thought about the differences between my two haptic vests, the differences between a dual shock and a dual sense, and I thought to myself, wow, could it be that much different? I don't know, but I'm really interested to try. And then when I looked at the prices, it was literally a no-brainer. At that point, I just went to the store and bought it, you know, because I knew I wasn't going to get the others because I'm price conscious. And with the promise of this haptics, because of the way it's designed and how it could incorporate it with my system here, because I'm in a motion simulator. You know, I've got a bunch of other tactile feedback points that you might not have if you're in a static rig. This might be your only one. If you've got some haptics or you're a PSVR2 user, you definitely got the headset or some other haptics that you could use. But me, I've got a rig that when I'm driving, I can feel the road. When it shifts, I feel it subtly. You know, when I slow down, when I bank, when I accelerate, I feel all that. And then I've got a butt kicker. And when I have the butt kicker going, that I feel shifts, screeches, engine revs, you know what I mean? So all that combined with the steering servo giving me haptics, I have a lot more points that I'm going to be getting information from to tell me how to drive. And for me, I want it to blend seamlessly. I don't want anything to stick out because that's immersion breaking when you play in VR. So I want it to blend. I don't need anything super powerful that's going to stick out because I didn't buy top of the line everything. I try to stay in an affordable range. You know what I mean? So for me, that's important. And I think this motor, because of the design and what it can do, gives me the best opportunity. Now that might not be for you, but I think this is a cutting edge motor, even though it's not the most powerful at the moment. I think it has definitely the chance to be a revolutionary motor for the sim industry. We'll see, but it's definitely interesting if that gear shift is, and how cool that is. I don't know, we'll see, but that's what made me decide to go with this, because I want to have an experience that is cohesive or harmonizes together, ironically as it is that they call their system harmony. So yeah, that's what was really important for me when it came to another reason to buy this. And the haptics, it should be to everybody, because that's what everybody always is chasing. So I got it mounted and it feels pretty good. I thought it might feel a little high, but you know, it feels actually pretty good. It's interesting now that I've got power to it. You can see how the steering wheel reacts. So that's really interesting, a lot different than my T150. I played with the screen now that I have power to it, and basically you just can change your settings, change a bunch of stuff, turn it up, and you know, turn the gear shift on to medium. Went in and messed around with the telemetry. Was hoping I could put more than one thing on a screen, but you can only put one. But it is what it is. I got it on speedometer. It's basically there for people who don't have a computer, because it's marketed to PlayStation users as well. So allow you to be able to change your settings. And really, that's it for what I didn't know before. Aside from that, I'll say that it looks a lot nicer on my rig than my old one did. My T150 doesn't look nearly as cool as this one does. This looks way better. It looks like it's more fitting with some of the angled designs of the DOF frame, and then the black, offsetting the black of my fan kit that goes to my rear vented fans. I mean, it just looks awesome, really. I think it looks awesome compared to the way it looked before. And the funny thing is people didn't like this design. I think it looks good, and it fills out my spot well. So for me, it's a win. You know, the looks is a win with my rig. So again, I'm happy with everything I've dealt with so far. But yeah, let's move on to the racing and see if this thing will make me faster like I think my pedals did. Alright, so I just got done with the races. I had to do two, because in the first race I was coming out of my pit after lap 12, and the second place car Supra clipped me on this side, and I ended up doing like a 360 donut. I ended up about like this to the track, so I was able to recover and eventually won and even got a clean race, but it was enough of a delay to skew lap times. So I did another one, and that one I didn't have any issues. I came back good, and the results were good, and I got a clean race, first place. So it's a comparable race with this steering wheel against that, but I'm going to show all three just so we have a little bit more data, because I think it's interesting what I looked at. So let's take a look at that data now and see if this made me any faster than the T150 or not.
Alright, what you're looking at is the best lap from the race with the T150. It was a clean race. I got first, but I drove 75.8 miles before I did the race. My best lap was lap 14 at 138.944 seconds. The overall race time was 26 minutes, 48.961 seconds. The 12 average lap time was 141.242 seconds, and then the 3 average pit time was 139.358 seconds. Now, the average pit time I broke off and made its own category because I couldn't get a lap time from it because they added the pit time. This time represents right before it switches to the pit crew when you're entering the pit. Now, if you look at the individual lap times, you will see that I have stuff labeled pit, BAPL for best after pit lap, and then B pit for best pit, and then BL for best lap. I did that so that we could have more data points to compare and see if we could get a better, stronger conclusion on whether the steering wheel makes me better or not. Now, here's the first race with the T598. It was a clean race. I got first place, but I did not warm up at all. I went directly into the race. My best lap was in lap 11 at 138.189. My overall race time was 26 minutes, 43.692 seconds. The 12 average lap time was 141.247 seconds, and then the 3 average pit time was 137.443 seconds. Now, you may look at the average lap time and say, well, that went up a little bit, but I just want to point out this is the race where I was crashed into coming out of the last pit by the second place Supra. And if you look at the individual lap times, you'll see that denoted on lap 13 with the C. Now, the average pit time was almost 2 seconds faster. So this one kind of got screwed up, which is why I ended up having to do the race that we're about to look at right now. Race 3, which was the second race with the T598. Same outcome, clean race, first place. The only difference now is I had 47.3 miles warmed up, which is the length of this entire race. Now, my best lap time was in lap 10 at 137.931. My overall race time was 26 minutes, 32.149 seconds. And then my 12 average lap time was 140.238 seconds. And then my 3 average pit lap time was 137.85 seconds. Now, clearly you can see these times are a lot faster. But before we get into that a little more, let's look at the crash from the second race. See, and I kind of recover well. Boom. I think that steering wheel might have helped me with the buttery smoothness. Anyways, I had 500,000 on the line. I could still potentially get 800,000. I didn't think I would with the crash, but I got a clean race, and I got 800,000, so that was awesome. But here's the actual data that are individual lap times for each race. Now, race 2 is what I want to focus on because that one I didn't have any warm-up time. And if you look at the first half of the race, the lap times look similar to the lap times in race 1. But then if you look at the second half of the race, the lap times look similar to the lap times in race 3. Now, if you just compared the first half of the race to race 1, you wouldn't think there was any change. The second half of the race may start to make you question. But if you split all the lap times, the 45 of them, in half, and you compare 22 versus 22, you see a major convergence or divergence between the number consistency, where one is roughly around 141, and then the other group is somewhere close to almost sub 140. And if you start to look at any of the individual things, you'll notice like the best after pit lap times between the two, one's in 5 and the other one's in 9, are about 7/10 of a second. The best lap times you're looking at are a second difference between the two if you just negate race 2 altogether. So clearly there's indication that I got faster, but was it familiarity with the track, or was it hardware, or both? Now here's the averages we can look at a little bit clearer, but I want to point out that in race 2, the numbers that are red with the C are corrupted. That's the stuff that got messed up because of the crash. The other stuff wasn't really affected, but I put it up there anyways. So if you look at the best lap time between race 1 and race 2, it was about 7/10 of a second, a little bit more. But then if you look at it between 3, it was over a second. Now you could also look at, and you look at the average lap time. The average lap time went up in 2 because of the crash, but was under a second or over a second lower in race 3. You know, your average pit time, while it ticked up from race 2 to race 3, it was still almost a second and a half lower than race 1. You know, your best average was 7 to 8/10 of a second for your pit. Your best after pit lap was 7/10 of a second. So clearly, these, when you're talking racing numbers, are significant enough to where there was improvement in some way. And I guess what way is what we're trying to find out here. So what do you guys think?
So, do you think it was the steering wheel that made me faster, or do you think it was my getting more used to the track, or do you think it was a combination of the two? What do you think about the data? Let me know in the comment section below. And I'd also like to know what's your guys' fastest lap times and with what car. I'm interested to see how fast I am compared to what other people are out there, because I don't play a ton load, but yeah, I'd like to know. So put your fastest lap time with what car you use to get that on here. I'd be interested to see how fast I am compared to what other people are. Alright, so I bought this to use for both my PlayStation and the PC because my motion rig works with both. And so I figured I would do a little bit of running around in some PC racers to see what the steering wheel felt like for those. In my 30-minute run with each game, which was Automobilista, Assetto Corsa, Formula One, and Assetto Corsa Competizione, what I noticed really was each game kind of was just the way they're programmed. Slightly, things a little bit different in each one. They all, ABS stutter felt same. Road hum was all pretty much the same. The gear shift that you get from the Thrustmaster T598 seemed to feel the same in all of them. The only things that really started to seem a little bit different was going into the grass in like Formula One and Automobilista 2 felt non-existent, where in the other games you felt something more bumps, more like you were off the road. In Competizione, the curb bumps didn't feel as strong as in some of the other games, but the road hum for that game felt stronger. So that's really all I noticed. As for the steering and how the magnetic forces hold you, it felt fine. I didn't think it felt weaker than my experience with Gran Turismo, for instance. So I thought that was good. I did not change any settings in any of the games, so all the settings I'm playing with were factory settings that I had the steering wheel set up on and in-game for all the games. So you can fine-tune stuff probably and get a little bit more oomph out of different areas than what I did. For instance, the curb bumps in Competizione, I could probably change some stuff there to make that feel more strong. So it's not necessarily a deficit, you know. But yeah, for the most part, I didn't have anything to say that it performed any worse. It's just either the settings aren't set the same and you have to mess around with that to get the most out of it, or the programming just isn't there to give you the haptics. You know, that's really what the two things are. So for me, I didn't play around with anything, but from what I did play, it felt fine. So if you're looking in the $300, $600 range and you're strictly only PC, this might be the ticket if you don't have any other components that allow you to get just the servo part for a little bit cheaper, you know. But yeah, I would recommend this for PC as well, for all the reasons that I stated earlier in the video. Alright, so in closing, considering that I don't have any experience with direct drives aside from this Axial motor, so I don't know what others are like, and I only have experience with the belt-driven motors to draw a comparison from, this thing is a game changer. It's so much nicer in every way, in my opinion. It feels more real, the haptics feel more alive, you know, the steering just feels more precise, so much more crisp. It, you know, it's hard to say. I don't know what the other motors are like with the cogging with radial motors and how bad that is in the other ones, being that this is an Axial, but this thing turns buttery smooth. It feels so nice. When you go into corners, you can just hold the corner and it feels like it translates to the game the way you want it to. Where I always felt sometimes when I was driving with my T150 that because of the slop, I had a multimeter that would kind of bounce a little bit or something. I don't know how to explain it any other way, but this thing, when you're weaving in and out of cars, it feels more precise, and sometimes inches can be the difference between you smacking somebody or going off onto the road. And it's just amazing how much more precise this feels. I was coming down the backside of the Touring Car 800 on a lap, and there was two cars like this, and I wanted to get around both of them and go straight, but I couldn't because the way the track makes you go to follow the line. And so I had to go around this guy and weave back over to get this guy. Well, by the time I was going past him, he had to start cutting over to meet his line. Well, there's a rail there, and I kind of felt like I kind of juded over a little bit, and with this steering wheel, it just felt like I zooted past him really, really good. And it felt, that was the one thing that stuck out to me, and it felt really, really good. And I had a smile on my face when it happened. And it's just, you know, when it comes to how good this felt steering and driving, you know what I mean? That moment, for some reason, stood out to me. You know, as for the haptics, the moment that stood out to me ultimately was the gear shift. Really, I mean, I saw a review where a guy said he didn't like it, and I saw a guy that said he couldn't live without it. And to me, I put it on medium because of that, and I thought it worked really well. I think it's interesting. I could see how it could be stupid or gimmicky to some people, but to me, I think it's an interesting added haptic that you, if you can't get it on anything else, I think it's cool. You can turn it off, you know. But for me, the thing about it on my car, and I think most cars, is when it kicks, it's kind of a harder kick, and it vibrates down the frame, so you kind of feel it into the frame, into your feet. And then my butt kicker kind of feels like the way a tranny's feeling. And they just harmonize perfectly. I mean, they blend well. The timing is all really good, along with the stuff I'm feeling from my car, because I feel the little bit of the bounce from the shifting. I feel the road haptics, all the road. Like if I go off on the curb, I'm getting haptics from this giving me curb bumps, but I'm also getting curb bump feeling from my motion simulator. And it all blended awesome, and I couldn't believe how awesome it was. It felt so much cooler than driving with my T150. The immersion level is so much cooler now with this than that old steering wheel. I just don't know what to say, you know. So with my experience going from that to this after 10 years and never using a direct drive, I would never go back to a gear belted steering wheel ever again. Never, 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 never. Never, never, never. I'm not saying that I'd ever go up to the highest levels like 25, 30, 35 Newton meter wheels, but I will never go back to belted steering wheel ever if I can help it, because my God, this is so much nicer. So much nicer. So much more realistic feeling. And since I'm a VR person and it's about immersion, that's exactly what you want. You know, the only thing I notice now is I think I got to put another fan on my wind kit, because I don't know if one fan's strong enough to blow 4 vents when I did all this racing. I got a lot more testing in with that. So in another video, I might show the change, because I got the fan on order. Anyways, this isn't about fans. It's about immersion in my rig and this steering wheel. And I would say across the board, my experience with the PlayStation, my experience with the PC racing, everything felt fine. I wasn't disappointed in any way, but my expectations aren't as hard to probably meet as some people out there that may watch this video. But if you're in my similar position, to me, I think this thing would meet your expectations, and depending on where you are financially, it might meet your wallet expectations as well, and I think you'll be happy with it. You know, so I have no complaints, really. I have none at this point. I've had no problems like I read when I did the research. So for me, it's been a win for multiple reasons that I listed in this video. So I hope that if you're somebody similar to me, $300 to $600 range, looking for upgrade into direct drive, and maybe you want both compatibilities, you don't have any other components and you're starting fresh, this might be the ticket for you at $475 if it stays at that price, you know. So again, I would recommend it whether you're on PC or whether you're going PlayStation. So that's what I think about this, and I'm happy I bought it. I have no regrets. I look forward to getting the load cell and swapping the brakes out, and then getting my fan kit to add to the immersion a little bit. But yeah, with that said, I'm going to wrap this video up because it's been really long. So if you've made it to the end, I really appreciate it. This video was a long one, took a lot of work. So if you'd like, leave a like. Anyways, hopefully this video will help you if you're looking out there, and you got some information out of it that you couldn't find anywhere else. So with that being said, till the next time, have fun gaming.